Hi everyone, I'm Sean, and today we are doing the March wrap-up. So let's get into it. I read 3 books in March. The first one is Angle of Repose by Wallace Stegner. This is off the top 1000 list. I had never heard of it or the author before, but I guess Wallace Stegner was a very influential writer. I think he partly influenced Larry McMurtry, who wrote Lonesome Dove, and so this book is often kind of compared to Lonesome Dove. It has those kind of qualities that some consider to be like a great American novel. And the book won a Pulitzer, which is usually a red flag for me, because I have never really read a Pulitzer that I enjoyed. To me, the Pulitzer is a mark of a bad book, and I think it's the case with this one. And the thing is, I read about 20 pages of it, and then the bookmark fell out. So I went to replace it, and I couldn't find where I left off. I'd read the end of scenes, and I was just like, I don't remember that, I don't remember that. So in the end, I just put it back somewhere where I thought just about where I left off. And then I came back to it a few days later, and I read again, 15, 20 pages or something. And then the bookmark fell out again. So when I went to reread it again, I had to find where I left off again. And again, I couldn't do it. I was just like, I don't remember this, I don't remember this. So I just started somewhere about 40 pages in, and I read another 10 pages, and I just knew it was not working for me. Birds. Just the thing with this book is I don't know whether to say it was overwritten, but the word that really comes to mind for me is thick. The writing was thick. I think Wallace Stegner was really writing it as if he was writing it for literary critics to be liked by them, and he wasn't writing it for regular people to entertain them. He was writing it for critics to be a great American novel. And I just don't think it is, because it's just impossibly thick. It's just not entertaining. The story is bland, the characters are bland. It's just all around, I wasn't feeling this book. So that's really all I have to say about it. I think on Goodreads I gave the book a 1-star review, because the author is dead, of course, and the book has received enough favorable attention over the years. A 1-star review isn't going to hurt it. But I think I probably should have just left it unrated, because usually what I'll do if a book is just not working for me, usually that'll be a book I just leave unrated. It just wasn't for me. And a 1-star rating is more for a book that I hate for some specific reason, or a book that I dislike for some real specific reason. So I don't know if this is really an unrated book, or if I should have given it a 1-star, but it just wasn't working out for me. I just didn't enjoy it. So I'd call this one a dud, and it was a did not finish. So, boop. The second book on the March read list is A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams, and this is another one that won a Pulitzer. So of all the books I thought I would probably did not finish, A Streetcar Named Desire was probably high on that list, because 1, I just am not into plays very much, and 2, I've heard about this play for a long while. I've never seen it, or I've seen any of the movies or anything, but I just was not enthused about it. And I probably would never have read this if it wasn't on the top 1000 list. But it was, and it's really a short book because it's a play, but so I thought, may as well give it a try. And the funny thing is, I thought it was okay, really. I still would say it's overrated, because I don't see anything about it that would make it really good. In the story and the characters and all of that, it was just really a so-so play, I thought. But I don't know. Usually for me, like, the base rating would be bird. Would be 2 stars. That's kind of my average rating, or the starting point. So I would probably say I'd give it a 3 stars because 2 stars is basically for effort. You know, you start out at 2 stars, and I don't know, the book or the play, it was just okay. So I don't know. I'd say it's a 3-star book I gave it. And I don't really have anything else to say about it. The main thing I would say in terms of criticism is, one, the characters often call each other by their names. So, gosh, I even forget her name, but Blanche. They'd be like, Stella, Stella, Blanche, whatever. Whenever they'd talk to each other, they'd say their names to each other. And often they do it like 3 times in the same quote or whatever. And I don't think people usually drop names in conversation. If you're looking right at someone, you don't really call them by their name. You just continue with the conversation. So that is very distracting to me when they're just saying each other's names in conversation. Another thing that bothered me was a lot of the writing, or whatever you want to call it, the script, was in exclamation points. And I don't like that because it feels like everything is being shouted at someone. And I don't know, you should really use exclamation points sparingly. I think you could even have something where it's obviously where their voice is raised, but it could still be in a period. So it could be like the character came out in a two-fisted state of rage and said blah, blah, blah. And you could just have it with a period because you could tell from the context that they're raising their voice. So, I don't know, exclamation points to me are just really distracting and weak. Because when you have to put an exclamation point for people to know that that is said loudly or in anger or whatever, I think that is a failure on the part of the writers. So I think a lot of times you should just be able to tell from context whether something is said with a raised voice inflection or whatever. Or let your reader put emphasis where they want. If they want to have certain words be shouted, they could do that in their own mind when they read the book. But anyway, so that's just another thing that bothered me, was exclamation points. And the final thing, actually I'll say it in to the book's credit, is in the scenes where it set up the scene, the writing would be very vivid. So I don't know an exact example, but the scenes in between scenes, I guess, the introductions to the scenes, were written very much like a novel. So it would say something like, you know, sunlight flickered through blinds and all this stuff. And that writing seemed very much like prose of a novel, not of a play. So I don't really know why that's in there, but I thought that was kind of refreshing in a way. So anyway, I've said enough about that. I gave it 3 stars. I'm pretty glad I read it. I guess it's not a terrible book. It's not a terrible play, I'd say. I still need to see it, I guess. But anyway, there you go. Okay, and last on the March read list is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. This is, of course, a top 1,000 book. Well, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's a top 1,000 book. But I've been reading it for almost 3 years now, and I guess I'll just get to this point now. One point against it is this book is just too dang long. It's over 1,000 pages, and it really does not have to be. So that's the first point against it. But as I read it, oh, I should also say I have never seen the movie of this. So I really do not know anything about the book or the movie other than that it's set in the South, that the main character is Scarlet, and that is really all I know about Gone with the Wind before reading it. And I actually bought a copy of the movie, and I haven't watched it yet, but anyway. So as I began to read the first chapter and the first few chapters, I thought that this was definitely a masterpiece. And the main thing that really stood out to me was the description. I think a lot of writers use description poorly. They use over-description or they use needless description. And I think a lot of description in novels is bad. So when you're saying like a character goes outside and you're talking about like the green of the grass and all this stuff, or you're talking about the sunlight and all this stuff, a lot of it I think doesn't matter, because what does it matter if it's like a good day or if it's raining or if it's overcast or whatever? I think a lot of that is just useless detail. And you could let readers fill in the blanks. You could let readers decide if it's a nice day or a cold day or whatever. If it's not important to the story, it's useless description. But in this book, I thought the description was used really masterfully, because everything about the description either added to the story, to the characters, to the setting. It was just all masterful description, I thought. So for about the first maybe 200 pages, I was really impressed with his book. And again, it took me a long while to read those 200 pages, because I've been reading it for almost 300, not 300 years. It feels like 300 years. 3 years. I've been reading it for about 3 years. So 200 pages in, I was enjoying it really well. I thought for sure this had to be a 5-star book. Like, it'd be criminal for me not to give it 5 stars, because it was just masterful. So I was just plucking away at it, you know, a chapter here, wait a few weeks, read another chapter, wait a couple months, read another chapter, and just making slow progress on it. But then I began to notice things that were bothering me about the book. One of them, and it's really the biggest one, is overuse of exclamation points. And Margaret Mitchell does it a lot. Just exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, over and over and over and over again. She must have used hundreds of exclamation points in this book, maybe thousands, I don't know. But it was just crazy much exclamation points. The next problem is repetitiveness. She would say the exact same sentence over and over again throughout chapters. And she would use them back to back too. So it'd be something like, the Yankees are coming, and then she'd say, Yankees near her home, and then it'd say the exact same lines but with exclamation points, and then it'd go on a little bit more, and then it'd repeat the exact same lines and exclamation points. So the exclamation points and the repetitiveness were really beginning to bother me, because when it's already a 1,000+ page book, and then you're just going to throw the exact same sentences at me and the exact same stuff and add exclamation points because somehow you think, oh, well, I read it just one sentence before, but now that you have that exact same sentence but with an exclamation point, that is now suddenly exciting. It's not. It's just stupid. It's like, okay, I get the point. You just need one sentence and you need to end it with a period and then go on, keep the story going. But she doesn't. She just keeps repeating stuff and adding exclamation points. So as I kept reading, my rating for the book began to creep down. But before I get to that, I want to talk about something in the book that I thought really stood out very well. There is a chapter in this book where the only thing that happens is the main guy, I guess, Rhett Butler, I guess, he gives Scarlett a scarf or something. And it was really one of my favorite chapters in the book. And all that happened in that chapter was he gave her a scarf. So it's like, well, why is that exciting? Just a whole chapter about a scarf? But that chapter was more like edge of my seat action than a lot of action books I've read. And the reason is because Margaret Mitchell just so well was able to make that scarf important, because it was important to the characters. I knew how it was important to Scarlett. And so when Rhett Butler gave her the scarf, it had meaning. And a lot of action books do not have that kind of meaning. It's just, you know, a chase sequence or a fight scene or whatever. And it's just, you've read 1,000 of them and you may not even care about the character, but they're throwing in these action scenes because they think it makes it an action book. But what Margaret Mitchell did here is she has just this character give Scarlett a scarf, but it's meaningful. And because of that, it was like edge of my seat reading. I was like, I don't know, it's just really good. So in that way, I would say if you're gonna write and learn about description, Margaret Mitchell is a good place to start. And like I said, she was pretty masterful description. So that I do not want to underestimate or understate that point. But back to the problems with the book. After like 200, 250 pages, what happens in the book is it seems like the perspective shifts. The entire book is really set from Scarlett's perspective, but about 200, 250 pages in, she is down in Atlanta, and of course, you know, the Union soldiers are approaching. And so what Margaret Mitchell does is she has these chapters that are basically recapping how the war is going. So she'll be telling us what is going on in the war, you know, like this battle is here, and, you know, the Union troops are moving, and here's what the South thinks about their losses, and all these things. And why I think this is bad is because it shifts the perspective away from the central character, who is Scarlett. And what Margaret Mitchell was doing so well at the start of the book is that, first I want to backtrack just a little bit. Something that I thought the book would get a lot of negative attention for is that it'd be very pro-South or very pro-Confederate. So I was very aware of that before I started reading. So when I did start reading and I saw that, against what I was expecting, Scarlett had really no interest in the war. She was not like what I expected. She was not this really pro-Confederate Spitfire who just hated Yankees and all this stuff. Basically, the only thing Scarlett wants is to go dancing, and she wants to have these pretty clothes, and she wants men to be after her because she is the most beautiful creature in the world and all this stuff. And she just wants to be the center of attention. She wants to be loved by everyone. She doesn't just want the one guy. Well, she does want one guy, but I mean, she wants everyone to, you know, have their attention on her. And in a way, because that will make her better, because it's like everyone will be after her, but nope, she's gonna have her eyes on this one guy. And I don't know, just the whole thing is, I thought Scarlett was a good character for that reason, because she was not interested in the war. She was not this real pro-South person. If anything, I think people in the South would kind of not like Scarlett because she was often just not interested in the war. She was not a supporter of it. And neither was Rhett Butler, who was kind of her love interest. And I know that Scarlett challenges him, and, you know, she's like, oh, you're, you know, a traitor, you're not supporting the South, you're, you know, you're a heathen and all this stuff, you're a rogue. But we all know it's a lie because we know Scarlett is not pro-South either. So I thought that was a real good central character for the story, and I really liked Scarlett at that point. But this is why it gets bad when Margaret Mitchell shifts to these scenes where she is recapping what's going on in the war. Margaret Mitchell starts talking about, you know, how the war is going, how the battles are going, what the South is thinking. And all these things are the position of like the typical Southern patriot, basically, not of Scarlett. And I think that is where Mitchell made her fatal mistake, is because Scarlett has a fresh perspective on the war. I mean, she's not interested in it. So when Mitchell starts talking about the war and the South losing and all this stuff, all the danger that's approaching, it's really something that Scarlett would not be all that interested in. Scarlett just wants to dance. She doesn't care about the war. So these chapters talking about the approach of the Union soldiers and stuff, it felt like it was that part of it was where the Southern sympathy thing creeps into the book. And it's not Scarlett's Southern sympathies, it's Margaret Mitchell's Southern sympathies. And that's where I could see, okay, I could see why this is more like pro-South people, why they would like it. And I think it's really unfortunate because it's not coming from Scarlett, it's coming from Margaret Mitchell. So I think she really should have just stuck with her principal character. Stick with Scarlet. Show what she thinks about this war and the approach of the Yankees and all that. But she didn't, and I don't know, that's just where it began to lose me. But then when it did go back to Scarlet, basically what is happening is her friend is having a baby, and Scarlet, there's a lot to digest here. But one thing is, Scarlet, the woman who is having the baby, is the one, her husband is the one that Scarlet really wants for herself. And there's points where Scarlet basically says she just wants the woman to die, and that way, you know, the guy would be available. And that is just something that really made her not likable. I mean, this is supposed to be one of her best friends. And I mean, yeah, I get that she likes the guy's husband or whatever, but saying, you know, she's hoping the lady dies, that's just like, why should I like Scarlet at all? But there's also things where Scarlet has a baby from a previous marriage, which was pretty interesting, but she's, for the whole book, at least up until the point I read, she has no interest in the kid, which I think is kind of okay from the perspective of the story. Just Scarlet never wanted that kid. She never wanted that husband anyway. But here the Union is attacking Atlanta, and they are literally bombing the city. And so the kid comes in and is like, "Mom, I'm hungry." And Scarlet says, "Go outside and go play." And there is literally cannon fire going on outside. And she just says, "Go play outside." And I could get her not wanting that kid, but I mean, just saying go play outside while there's a freaking war going on out there. Another point that made her unlikable. And then the third strike against her. So the first one was just saying, you know, she just wishes her friend dies. The second one is just saying go play outside. You know, maybe the cannon fire will get you and take you away, basically. And then the third thing that really bothered me, so the lady is about to have the baby, and the slave basically reveals that she lied about not having delivered babies before. So she's never helped a woman give birth before. So that leaves it to Scarlet to deliver this baby. And so Scarlet is just enraged at this slave woman, and she threatens her, like saying she'll send her south, which basically means she'll sell her into worse slavery. And she also, in that chapter, she's making threats about like whipping her, and she's like she'll take all the skin off her back and all this stuff. This is what Scarlet is saying. And until that point, she'd never really shown any really, I guess, hatred toward blacks. And I could get that, you know, she's stressed out, she's mad, there's all this stuff going on, so whatever. But still, just following that up, saying, you know, she hopes the mother dies, and then, oh god, I even forget the second thing, saying for her kid to go outside, and then telling a slave she'll sell her south, and she'll whip the skin off her back, and all this stuff. At that point, I was just like, no. Scarlet cannot be redeemed after this point. There is nothing she could do that would make me like her again. So, all in all, at that point, about, actually I have it here, it's 375 pages. That's how far I got, 375. Basically, by that point, if I would have read it any more, the rating would have tanked. Because the writing, the repetitiveness, the exclamation points, the basically Southern sympathies that Margaret Mitchell seemed to include in the book, and Scarlet's unlikability, just wanting her friend to die, just telling her kid to go outside while there's a freaking war going on, and then threatening this slave woman to beat her and sell her south. At that point, it was just like, nope, I don't even care what happens going forward. I'm just done with the book. I'm done with Scarlet. And it's just freaking too long. So, one thing I kind of have half a mind to do, and I won't, but I almost have half a mind to edit this book and fix all the flaws. Basically, take out all the repetitive sentences, cut all the exclamation points, just edit it down, And I would even leave all the stuff Mitchell includes about, like, her saying she just hopes her friend dies or whatever. I would leave all that in because I think that's part of the story, part of her character's character. But I'd also cut out the chapters recapping this what's going on with the battles. I would try to put that from Scarlett's perspective, or just cut those scenes out entirely. And I honestly think you could edit this book down to about 400 or 500 pages, and it may be real good, and it may be a 5-star book then. But as it is, if I read any more of this book, I would probably give it 1 or 2 stars. But I'm just going to quit where I was, and I'm going to give it, I don't know, I'm going to have to give it 3 stars. Basically, I'm deducting 1 star for the exclamation points and the repetitiveness, and then another star for Scarlett really becoming unlikable there about 300 pages in. Hoping her friend dies, telling her kid to go and play outside, and threatening this slave woman. That deducts another star, and I'm going to say Mitchell's basically lucky I'm stopping it there, because the book could definitely, those things alone could get the book a 1 star. But basically I'll give it 3 stars. The main thing about this book in the positive is the descriptions, especially early on, are really good, really masterful in a way. But the rest of it, the exclamation points, the repetitiveness, the threatening to sell the slave woman south, all that just left a really bad taste in my mouth, and at that point I could not continue this book. So I'm really disappointed I couldn't finish it. I really wanted to, but I just can't. At this point, I just cannot read another sentence of this book. So that is it. And that is the March wrap-up. So thanks for watching. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Have you seen the play, A Streetcar Named Desire? What did you think about it? Let me know, and I'll see you next time. Bye.